Chapter 9. The St. Francis Orphanage. Months passed. It was May 5, 2003, a morning like any other. In the classroom of the Jade Clover House, Professor Lady calls Roger, Adrian, Gavin and Priscilla to Professor Alvin's office near the teacher room. There, news awaited them that would surprise them. Once there, sitting in the armchairs, in Professor Alvin's office, he mentions the following to them. Good morning, guys. I have summoned you here for a very important task. Due to your good grades, the school has asked me to assign a category, a task, which consists of an expedition to a specific place, where they must perform a task for a person or a community, commented Professor Alvin. And what type of task do we have to perform? He asked Adrian with curiosity. Professor Alvin got up from his chair, went to a closet that was behind him, and took out a rag doll. It was a doll with orange wool hair, her face was white and she had a painted smile. Black color, red cheeks, light blue clothing with white overalls and socks with red and white horizontal lines. See this doll? I am going to send you to the Plateau district. Crossing the Great Prairie you will find the St. Francis Orphanage. There I want you to look for a little girl, named Darlene Sherry. She is a girl from the orphanage, short, with light skin and black hair with a colored headband. Pink, but it doesn't have any toys. So the Jade Clover House was chosen to deliver a donation to the orphanage. We can't send a very large entourage there, so we chose you four, added the Professor Alvin. And how will we get to that place? Asked Roger. The train will take you to the Plateau district. Here you have the signed permit from the school. And there you start walking through the prairies for a few minutes until you reach the orphanage. From St. Francis, the entire path has signs. You will not get lost. The path is simple. You will only see pineapple plants around you, concluded the professor. The boys took the doll and at around 9 in the morning, they took the train that headed towards the Plateau district. On the train, everyone kept a secret about the orbs. Gavin and Priscilla sat together at the window while Roger and Adrian sat next to the door that led to the hallway of the carriage. What a waste of time. What kind of task is this? Wasting time with some stupid children, said Adrian abruptly. Be nice, said Priscilla through clenched teeth. I think the same. Right now we could be investigating something at the school about where to obtain the remaining orbs, Roger commented. Priscilla looked annoyed at Adrian and Roger. She turned to look at the window, as she had been doing throughout the trip. Gavin was reading the Pizcet Times, a town newspaper that was on the seat of the carriage. Someone had left it forgotten. Look at this, said Gavin as he took out a piece of the town newspaper and read aloud. A machine produced at the laboratory of the great campus of Pizcet was stolen yesterday afternoon. The inhabitants of Pizcet are alerted to be careful, since this machine can be modified to be used as a weapon, with cannons to fire. It travels at a high speed, according to the clues. The machine was stolen by a tall, thin man with dark skin, short hair and dark glasses. The Lunesque Sentinel Guards, members of the Town Hall Sentinel Station, are already working to find the whereabouts of the machine and the suspect. It has been a long time since we heard about robberies in the town, added Roger, surprised. The prophecy says it. Not only will there be disappearance of people, many people who are manipulated by the witch to do different tasks. Perhaps that guy is under the effects of her, and stole that machine. It is a weapon of mass destruction, commented Priscilla. So, since the witch knows that we are behind the prophecy, is this guy looking for us? Asked Adrian. Is it possible? Said Priscilla. We must be very careful then, said Gavin. To everyone. It would be that, or that she is starting to assemble her army of people and weapons, and then attack, commented Roger. We don't know exactly what she plans to do. We can only be guided by what we see and give a hypothesis of it could happen, said Adrian. We have to go back to the school today after this. But we could stay to investigate the Pizcetomen district in search of some orb. Maybe there is one here, Gavin commented. I agree, said Priscilla as she continued to look out the window. After the conversation on the train, the four arrived at the Pizcetomen district. They got off the train and began to walk towards the prairies. An infernal sun illuminated them. The temperature was very high, added to the level of humidity due to the rains of the past days. After walking for more than 10 minutes, crossing the grass meadow, watching horses and cows graze, the boys began to enter a pineapple plantation field. They continued walking when in the distance, they noticed a huge object that was covered with a blanket. Look at that. What do you think it is? Adrian asked while pointing to the horizon. Let's see. In this place there are no houses nearby. Only meadow and pineapple plants, said Roger, when they approached. He came out of some pineapple plants a guy with a gun and said, You guys. Stop there. Stop. Everyone raised their hands and turned to see. It was the subject of the newspaper story. Who the hell are you? Roger asked brusquely as he took his trident, and the guy replied, My name is Tom. Give me your stuff and go back to your homes. You can't get in, the guy responded. We know who you are. You stole the great campus machine, said Adrian. Ha. I'll have to get rid of you so you don't accuse me with the city council. Yes. I stole it from a scientist named Andy who worked there, said Tom, who turned around, but pointing his firearm at the four boys. He removed the blanket from what was in the middle of the gravel street, and it was the robbery machine, 3 meters high, with large wheels. It was black. The subject got on the machine, turned it on and began to roll towards where they were. Tom was planning to run over the four of them. That was when Priscilla took out her book from a pocket of her jacket and threw freeze on the front wheels of the vehicle. Damn! How dare they! Now I'm going to pulverize them! Tom shouted furiously, and he activated the cannon that the machine had. It was a weapon of destruction. The cannon came out of the engine door and pointed towards the boys, and the duel began on the prairie. Adrian, Roger, Gavin and Priscilla got ready for the duel. Tom's machine could not move, since its wheels were immobilized by the ice that covered them, so the cannon it had could not be fired immediately. It needed several counting turns to load and then fire, so Tom did not allow it. There was no choice but to activate the flamethrowers to launch burr attacks, and then the machine used rokarga. They were small earthquakes, and in addition to that, pieces of earth that were launched like missiles towards them. Gavin used his boomerang to create a shield with several tornadoes with windaga. Roger attacked the machine with the trident, while Adrian, with his ability, stole certain artifacts to destabilize it, which was very useful because the machine began to disassemble into parts. And finally, Priscilla used her spellbook to launch Aqua Elect against the body of the machine. After a few minutes, the machine felt very worn out. Signs of smoke appeared in certain parts and others already on fire. Short circuits with sparks in other parts that were also visible to the naked eye. Everyone continued attacking and defending themselves, when suddenly, Priscilla's spellbook began to turn bright. Her special attack was ready to be used, and she took her turn to launch the attack called Death's Look, where the book shows an eye in the sky. To launch flashes of Elect, Rokarga, Burr and Aqua, thus creating an explosion in the place. The machine had been destroyed and Tom had been disintegrated by the explosion. The group had won the duel against the machine and the fugitive Tom. After the fight, the smoke from the explosion dissipated a little. They placed the blanket with which they initially covered the machine on top of Tom's charred remains. He deserved it. Damn rustler, said Gavin. Scavenger, said Roger through his teeth. Looking at the guy on the ground, that's the result of joining with evil. if you're on that side, don't expect total success in life. The destination will always be jail or death, said Priscilla. Let's continue on our way, said Adrian. I congratulate you. You fight very well, said Priscilla, and she high-fived Gavin, Adrian and Roger. And they continued the road to the St. Francis Orphanage. After walking for about 40 minutes, they arrived at the place, and they rang a bell that was at the main gate. The gates opened. They entered, but there was no sign of anyone, nor of boys or girls who were hovering around the place. How strange, there is no one, said Roger. It seems like an abandoned place, Adrian commented as he looked around. Could it be that the professor sent us to the wrong place? Gavin asked worriedly. Let's move on. See if we can find something, Priscilla said as she walked. The four began to walk. The St. Francis Orphanage was desolate. The place had gardens with bushes, white and red roses, a statue of the god Eshin in its central courtyard, and a small hermitage next to it, and then some small cabins of what seemed to be the rooms of the boys and girls who lived there. After starting to advance, 2 wolves with red eyes and rage came out of the rooms, and several dolls without eyes, with needles in their limbs. The dolls were so old that their hair was so worn out, and followed by this, a trunk that came jumping, and in its gate it had a sharp saw that opened and closed. When the gate closed and the procession of henchmen came towards them, they heard a girl shout, "Help!" Adrian, Priscilla, Gavin and Roger got ready to fight the henchmen. Adrian went straight to the trunk, and with his skill he managed to place 2 explosive bombs inside it, so they exploded and the trunk flew into 1,000 pieces. Gavin and Roger took care of the wolves, easily defeating them with physical blows with their weapons, and Priscilla took it upon herself to defeat the dolls by throwing fire at them with burr, turning them into ashes. After finishing with the henchmen, they ran to the room where they could hear a girl screaming, and sure enough, there was the girl, in a corner, with a very damaged doll under her blanket and with her hands over her eyes. She was terrified. So the boys began to talk to him to help him. "Hey girl, don't worry, they're gone," said Roger. "Are you okay?" asked Adrian, and the girl. He removed the blanket that was covering his body. The tears stopped. He smiled at the boys. He got up and he ran to Priscilla and hugged her, saying, "Please help me, don't leave me alone in this place." Priscilla placed her right hand on the girl's head and told her that everything was going to be okay. "What's your name, little one?" Priscilla asked, and the girl answered, sobbing, "My name is Darlene." "She's the one we were looking for," Gavin said. "Were they looking? We come from Rhoda School. They sent us here for a task. We had to look for you and give you this," Gavin said, and he opened his backpack and handed the rag doll to the girl. Darlene was very happy. She now felt confident talking to them. "Everyone left the orphanage. They forgot about me," said the girl with a broken voice. "Why would they do that?" "Where did they go?" asked Priscilla, worried. "They left a week ago, when the Cry Maiden began to appear in the place," said the girl. "Cry Maiden?" asked Adrian. "It's a ghost, appears on moonlit afternoons and nights, near a spring of water at the back of the orphanage, where the children's play area is. He walks for a few hours to one of the rooms of the orphanage," he explained. The girl. "And why did they leave you here alone?" asked Roger. Darlene began to tell them the sad story, and everyone began to imagine what that had been like. "The vicars and clerics who are in this place watch over our growth, security, education. They feed us, they bring us toys. They left. They wanted to confront the Cry Maiden, but she is very powerful. They gave up, and one stormy night, they started with a curfew at the orphanage. They arrived all the vicars to the rooms, packed everything and got into the carriages. They planned to take us to a new place, the 9 children here. I heard that it was to the Antoska clinic, which had a place where the girls could stay and children. From here, in the storm, I went out to the playground, in search of the Cry Maiden, who was already approaching her presence. Perhaps she is not a bad woman, and she is just looking for help. I wanted to talk to her and ask her if I could help her and maybe like that. She was leaving and everything was like before. And Priscilla answered, and why didn't the Vickers come back for you? While the girl wiped her tears, she answered, because they said the place is cursed, and once they left, they promised not to return. The girl started crying again, so Priscilla told her to come with her. And they both sat in an armchair to talk. Priscilla tried to revive the girl, who had been left alone and her friends had left. He didn't even know who his mother was. He arrived at the orphanage when he was only 8 months old 6 years ago. The boys decided to stay with her and devise a plan to see if they would get a chance to see the Cry Maiden that afternoon. Gavin stared at some drawings in the room. The names of the 2 children who had made those works of art caught his attention. Darlene watched him, because she found it curious that he found her friends' drawings interesting. Joey and Marie, saying this while he touched the relief of the drawings with her hand, and Darlene, seeing that, approached Gavin. Do you know them? The girl asked Gavin. No, only their names remind me of 2 old friends. Gavin answered. They were my friends. I don't know if I'll see them again. What happened to yours? The girl replayed. Gavin lowered his head and began to walk towards an armchair that was nearby, and a tear came out of his eye. Darlene followed him. She noticed that she was crying, so she took a handkerchief out of her pocket and wiped the tear from Gavin's cheek. Sit down, I'll tell you something, Gavin said. Darlene sat next to him and started listening to Gavin. It was Christmas time. It was summer, December 17, 1997. I was 6 years old, and Joey was 12 years old. He lived across the street from me. He and I used to go to a small forest in Green Hills where an orange fox appeared. We fed him apples. Maybe he was someone's pet. He had a blue necklace with 5 diamonds on them. One blue, another red, another yellow, green, purple, pink and silver, and Marie. She was the same age as me. She was my neighbor. When I turned 7, I never saw either of them again, really. Why? Darlene answered. Joey and Marie moved away. They went somewhere else. I never got to say goodbye to them. Gavin said with teary eyes, and you haven't done anything or found out about their fate? Darlene asked. No, it's impossible. I haven't heard anything from Marie for 7 years. We lost communication. If I knew where she was, I would send her letters to communicate with her. I still remember the last time I talked to her. You forgot to give me your address to send a letter, Gavin said, and Darlene began to look at the possible vision of the last conversation between Gavin and Marie. On a green lawn in the sloping garden of the home of Marie's grandparents, Gavin, a 6-year-old boy, was waiting, sitting in the morning breeze on the garden grass. Hey, so, what did you want to talk about? Said little Marie. When summer come, you will leave the town, answered little Gavin, regretful and sad. I should have thought about it with my parents, but that's the way it is. Many people are going to look for new paths. Should have figured. All the people are leaving, Marie answered. But, I don't like them. I'm not going just to look for work, said little Gavin. Then, a silence accompanied the conversation. Marie looked towards the sky and Gavin also looked towards the sky and said, I'm gonna be a researcher, the best of the best, like the founder of the great campus. A great science hero, huh? Oh, isn't it pretty hard to become that? Marie asked, looking happily at Gavin. Yeah, so I won't be back for a long time, Gavin added. I guess not. Think you'll be in the papers? Marie asked. I'll try, said Gavin as he lay down on the grass and looked up at the blue sky. Marie also lay down on the grass, picked up a yellow flower and then turned to look at Gavin, saying happily, just, promise me one thing, okay? When we're older and you're famous, if I'm ever in science troubles, promise you'll help me. Gavin was surprised and blushed, saying, And which Marie replied, "That's what friends do, they help friends." "Please? Just once? Really?" Gavin said. "Yes, please. Just once. Promise me," Marie emphasized. Okay, fine, I promise," Gavin said happily as they both looked at the blue sky lying on the grass with their hands behind their heads like pillows. Darlene opened her eyes after finishing visualizing what Gavin had told her. Counted between him and Marie. "And your friend?" asked the girl. "He passed away. I found out that he died until 3 or 4 years later," said Gavin. "Who could be so cruel to tell you the news so many years later?" answered the furious girl. "My family, they believed that. Because I was a child, the news was going to hit me emotionally and psychologically. But the blow was harder when they told it to me when I was more mature," said Gavin. "I'm very sorry," said the girl as she lowered her head. "Joey died of a serious illness. I had no idea, but he was absent from the neighborhood at times. And he attended treatments at the Antosca clinic. His illness had advanced so much that nothing could be done, that the last months that I shared with him were his last months of life. His family decided to move so that I wouldn't know. He supposedly passed away 2 or 3 weeks after moving," Gavin argued sadly. "And where did his family move?" the girl asked curiously. "I don't know, but I know that one day we will meet again. If I die, I know that one day I will see my old friend again," said Gavin. "Do you have the same hopes as with Marie?" asked the girl. "Hope is the last thing that is lost. With her maybe one day we will see each other again. When I finish my studies, I will go look for her," said Gavin. "I would like to have that same motivation and joy that you have for having faith that one day you will see your friends again. Your friend who still is alive and your friend when you are part of eternal life in the paradise of Eshen," added the girl. "You can think like that too," said Gavin smiling at the girl. "It's a little hard to believe that," said Darlene. "I'll give you a tip. If you really love your friends, even if they are far away, they will always be with you," Gavin said. Looking smiling at the girl. "How?" asked Darlene. "Those who appreciate us never leave us. Appreciation and affection are like a seed, which is planted in the heart of each one. And for that seed to germinate and grow, it is fed by fertilizer and water, which in this case friendship and union are the 2 foods, or fertilizer, that seed needs in the heart to grow. Finally, that plant in the heart will give a luminous flower, which will be like a flame that will never go out. Because that flame symbolizes those people who will never leave us and are light in my heart," Gavin explained, and Darlene smiled when she heard those words and gave Gavin a big hug. "I will follow your advice, Gavin. I hope to see my friends again who are with me in my heart," said the girl. Priscilla touched Gavin's shoulder, moved by hearing that story about her childhood friends. A few minutes passed, and Roger and Adrian entered the room where they were to mention that the weather was starting to change. The sky was starting to turn gray. The breeze was getting stronger, to which Darlene mentioned, "It's coming!" Exclamation mark. "The ghost is coming. Let's go to the playground," Adrian shouted, and Roger followed him. Darlene took Priscilla and Gavin by the hand to guide them towards the playground and wait for the moment when the Cry Maiden appeared. After walking with the girl, everything began to get darker. The stream next to the doll room in the play area began to turn into ice and someone could be heard knocking on the doors of the doll room while a female cry was heard very loudly. "It's her. She's already here," said Darlene. A white woman, with a white cloak, and an apron of the same color, with messy black hair and teary eyes, came forcefully out of the doors of the doll room of the orphanage. The Cry Maiden was in front of the boys and the girl. "Who are you?" the phantom woman asked furiously and crying. "We came to know why you are here. People left this orphanage because of your presence," said Roger. "Give me the girl and I will leave," said the Cry Maiden. Priscilla stood in front of Darlene to protect her, and the other boys got ready in a defensive position. "Give me my baby, or you will regret it," the maiden insisted again. "You will have to defeat us," Adrian shouted. "Darlene," the demonic ghost said between his teeth. Darlene was surprised to hear that the Cry Maiden said, "Get out of here," with teary eyes. "Darlene, I'm your mother," the ghost added. "What?" Gavin shouted. "It can't be." Roger shouted and Priscilla also shouted, saying, "Impossible. No, you are not a mother." "I never knew my mother," said the girl while shaking her head with denial and teary eyes. The Cry Maiden began to scream loudly with her crying. Darlene began to cry and the four boys fell to their knees and put their hands to their ears. The woman's crying was so loud that their heads hurt and they went into a frenzy. "Darlene, Darlene," the woman said in a crying tone. Gavin, Priscilla, Roger and Adrian managed to get up and the duel against the Cry Maiden began. Gavin used Windaga to draw water from the spring or stream and throw it in the form of a tornado at the Cry Maiden, while Roger tried to cut the rags of the woman with her trident. Adrian with her ring threw explosives as the Cry Maiden began to walk towards them, and Priscilla with her spell book cast Burr and Elect on her. The Cry Maiden, engulfed in flames, paralyzed and wet, began to scream again with her loud crying, and began to fire spells of Psykarga, Bersaka and Frenaga. The Cry Maiden faded into the ground and disappeared. The boys were left looking around when suddenly, the worst happened. The Cry Maiden came out of the ground where Darlene was and caught her in her hands. She had her in her lap and Darlene was screaming, "Help me." "Damn it," said Priscilla. "Listen, we must attack very carefully not to hurt the girl," said Adrian. "Find a target so as not to hurt Darlene, the woman's head or hands," said Roger. The Cry Maiden lowered his crying, and hugged Darlene tightly, who desperately asked for help because the squeeze was very strong. The woman used freeze and aqua against the boys, coupled with loud cries that continued to produce frenzy and confusion in their heads. Darlene passed out from the strangulation of the woman's tight embrace in her laps, and lay still. The boys continued attacking, until they finally managed to defeat the Cry Maiden. Darlene fell on the grass and the woman began to fade away as if she were a ghost. She screamed and her crying could be heard diminishing. The fight was over, giving the boys the victory. Priscilla ran to Darlene and picked her up. She was still alive, but she lost consciousness. So Gavin quickly looked in her backpack for a potion to give her, and she regained consciousness. Darlene woke up and asked what had happened to the Cry Maiden, to which everyone responded that she had been defeated. After this, a carriage and a horse were heard that had arrived at the main gate of the orphanage. The sky began to clear and a vicar entered. A woman in a cream-colored suit and a square veil on her head, with a necklace and a medallion, arrived at the scene of the incident. "Darlene, my girl, here you are." "Thanks God," said the vicar, who looked at the boys and said, "Who are you? I see that they come from Rhoda School." "I am Vicar Isa, head of the St. Francis Orphanage. Yes, they sent us to give a gift to Darlene, as a task. But we arrived and saw that there was an unusual activity in this place." Roger answered. "Yes, we had to flee from here because of that demon," said the vicar. "He is no longer there." "We have eliminated him," said Gavin. "Really?" asked the vicar while putting her hands on her cheeks and her eyes bulged. "That's Vicaria Isa. They rescued me," said Darlene. "I must thank them. I don't know how to repay them." "Darlene, please go to the carriage. We will take you to the new home. Your friends are waiting for you there," answered the vicar. "Okay, you guys heard. I'll see my friends again." "Vicaria, can I say goodbye to them?" the girl asked happily. "Of course," the vicar replied. Darlene gave a hug to Roger, Adrian and especially Priscilla and Gavin. Darlene left for the main gate and the vicar returned with the boys. I must thank you very much for healing this place. It is a special home for boys and girls who do not have a family, said the vicar. The place will open again, right? Asked Priscilla, since the demon disappeared. The other vicars and clerics must come to cleanse this place of the traces of evil magic that remains here. Added the vicar frankly, it's time to leave. We must return, said Adrian as he took his backpack. No. Leave yet. I want you to accompany me to the hermitage for a moment. I have something very useful that can be of use to you. Please follow me, said the vicar as she began to walk towards another section of the orphanage. The boys followed the lady to the hermitage. Inside the orphanage, before entering, she told them a story. We have to go and now we will have to pray. Adrian replied annoyed. I thank you very much for how you protected Darlene. For her I think you are very important people and I know that she will remember you with great affection for the rest of her life. She came here as a baby. And it is a bit of a sad story. He said the vicar. Why? What happened to her mother? Priscilla asked with concern. I'm afraid the Cry Maiden was actually Darlene's mother. But she was a ghost and came back for her. The vicar replied. What happened to her mother? That? Are you serious? Gavin shouted in surprise. Yes, you see. Darlene's mother came from a faraway place, about 6 or 7 years ago. She was one of those women who emigrate from their homeland in search of a dream. The woman was very young. She was less than 18 years old. That dream of having money, better clothes, quality of life, studies, to help her family. She arrived in Pizcet and got a job in the home of a wealthy person who was cruelly abused and raped by that man's son, and became pregnant. When they realized that she was pregnant, they fired her. She returned to her native home hiding her pregnancy under her dress and her apron, which she failed to conceal for long. Her family, very attached to spiritual beliefs, began to tell her about her mistakes at all hours, creating anguish, stress and depression. One night, under a strong storm, she arrived in the district of New Riverville, and near the river. She gave birth to Darlene, and threw her into the stream of the river. Minutes after seeing what she had done, she repented and threw herself after of the baby screaming and crying. But no one was going to help her because it was a lonely place in the mountains. The woman drowned, but Darlene survived because the woman's body served as a raft. Until down the river she was rescued by some vicarias who were near the river and they heard a baby crying. After a while, on some moonlit or stormy nights, near the rivers, you begin to hear the woman crying, looking for her baby. That's when she began to appear at the orphanage. The god Eshin in her mercy will have compassion on her and possibly, with her eternal rest, he will come to forgive her for what he did. Explained the vicar. The boys were dismayed to hear the sad story that confirmed that the Cry Maiden was Darlene's mother. Well, by the way, I want you to take this bouquet of white roses and this chalice to the hermitage in our orphanage. There lies the grotto of the statue of the Serene Summon, deity of healing. Give it the offering and an act of reverence and she will always be with you. I have to leave now. Thank you very much again. May Eshin accompany you, concluded the vicar. The 4 boys entered the hermitage and placed both offerings in front of the statue. They bowed with their hands together, just as Professor Muller had explained to them in summoning lessons. A light illuminated the statue of Serena and a spirit came down towards them singing the song of faith that Professor Muller sang in prayer. A flash was placed on Priscilla's body. The first summon of the group, Serena's, was already with them. Upon rising from their bow, they noticed that a lamp appeared on the floor of the hermitage, in another corner of the room. A small chest appeared. Priscilla approached to take it. She opened it and inside it was a book of spells with steel spine and cover. He opened it and could read those spells. Gavin, Roger and Adrian were curious about the book, to which Priscilla replied, "It is the second book of spells. the second volume of my main weapon, Iruk. My techniques and level will increase. After taking the book, on the opposite wall where the chest appeared, they noticed that a hatch opened, and a sphere was embedded in the wood of that small room. Adrian approached and said the following: "Look, it's an orb," and he took it. It was the silver orb. "Excellent. So it was good to come here after all," said Priscilla. "Now we only have 7 left," added Roger. "We have the summon, the silver orb and a new weapon for Priscilla. I think we can go now," he said. Gavin. Some chimes rang in the room. It was an old clock, moving its pendulum. The hands opened like doors and a cuckoo came out to tell the time. Then everyone went to Farol and touched it at the same time and were taken towards the school to inform Professor Alvin that they had completed the task. Upon arriving at school, after giving Professor Alvin the report, everyone was ready to return home after a long day. Before Priscilla said goodbye to them, she told them, "Rest well, we'll see you tomorrow. We don't know what awaits us." Priscilla had joined the team against the cause. Several months passed since that event at the St. Francis Orphanage. It was September 28, 2003. There were only a few months left of the current academic year, after leaving the dual and Fudblaze lessons. The 4 boys had improved their magical abilities to a second stage. They had learned the magical abilities of Berna, Electra, Aquara and Frieza. After leaving class, Gavin and Adrian decided to go to the Green Forest to see how the Great Saku Tree had evolved after its post-storm regeneration. When they arrived at the place, they noticed Jimena and Hector looking at the side of the tree's bark again. "What are you looking at?" Gavin asked. "Do you remember the caterpillars from last year?" Hector said. "Group of caterpillars." At that, a strong smell of putrefaction began to arrive again, and a small tremor. The hundreds of caterpillars had formed a giant caterpillar, and it was eating the root of the tree. So Adrian and Gavin decided to act and launched Berna against the giant worm until it was finished. "That was close. If we let that giant worm eat the roots of the Great Saku Tree, it would not have been able to regenerate and would die," said Adrian. Guys. Paula came shouting. "What's wrong?" Adrian asked. "It's Aaron and Rasmus. A creature has them cornered very close to the gym." Paula shouted desperately. "Let's help them," Gavin said, and they ran away immediately, and when they arrived near the gym, Roger was already there. They noticed a creature, apparently released from a creature book in the library by 2 sixth-year students of the Bronze Bees named Franca Scotch and Jamie Thorne. Franca was a girl with pale skin, blonde hair, a pointed nose and wore a skirt, while Jamie was an obese girl with light skin, curly black hair, glasses and big cheeks. "What's going on here?" Gavin asked. "Are you friends of Aaron and Rasmus?" 2 friends, the of them offered to eliminate the creature, but it used an attack that gave them a sleeping pill kiss and now they are asleep, said Jamie. The creature was 3 black balloons, levitating one after another. They had blue eyes and an orange mouth. When Adrian and Gavin prepared to attack one of the balloons, it approached and gave them the sleeping pill kiss and they fell asleep. So Roger was left alone in the fight. The girls refused to help since they were full of fear. Roger took the trident from him and attacked with the sharp trident, causing one of the balloons to burst. Another balloon attacked with Electra to paralyze. But Roger evaded the attack and on his second turn, he cast his trident and popped the second balloon. The last balloon, left alone, lowered its defense, and Roger took advantage of this to throw his trident at it, causing it to explode and the specter returned to the book. Jamie and Franca kissed her cheeks to thank her, took the book and took it to the library. Aaron, Rasmus, Gavin and Adrian woke up from sleep. The months passed and the 3rd year of the course had passed extremely quickly. So the festivities and vacations began again, and the fourth year was waiting for them in a few months.